One of the many almost forgotten sagas in the history of the Royal Academy, and indeed in the history of London in general, in arts terms of the 20th century, is the fact that there was a major exhibition, in fact the largest exhibition ever staged of Brazilian art, and the first in the UK, put on at the Royal Academy. There's two interesting contexts for me about how the exhibition came about. One is the military history of the Second World War. Brazil enters on the side of Britain and the Allies, and 25,000 troops go and fight in Italy. But I also love the fact that artists, Brazilian artists, wanted to get involved in the war effort by producing an exhibition to sell work to make a symbolic and monetary gesture to the war effort.
I can't imagine how this exhibition ever happened. It seems a complete miracle. Britain was still at war. Obviously one of the reasons for the show was that Brazil, as it were, wanted to make a cultural gesture as well as an incredibly valuable one in terms of sending men to the front.
It was an artist-led initiative. Now this is significant because Brazil was at the cusp of institutionalizing modern art. Museums of modern art were created in the late 40s, and the São Paulo Biennial inaugurated its first edition in 1951. So this is a pre-institutionalized initiative from modernist painters in Brazil. The artworks traveled by ship. We can imagine how dangerous this was when German submarines sinking many Brazilian merchant ships left, right and centre. In fact, around 3 times as many sailors from these merchant ships died as the soldiers that Brazil sent for the Allied effort in Italy.
The paintings arrived here and they still had not got a venue when they arrived.
The Tate had just been bombed. The National Gallery was closed for most of the time. The cultural life of the nation was under threat.
After the Royal Academy had already turned the exhibition down on the grounds that they didn't like the pictures, Anthony Eden, who was then Foreign Secretary, he goes back and says, please, it's the only place in London we really needed to show it. The appeal to the Royal Academy was really quite urgent. They had a month to organise this exhibition. I mean, imagine the Royal Academy now putting on an exhibition of over 160 works of art in a month.
The exhibition was staged, slightly reluctantly by the Royal Academy, in 3 of the great fine rooms, and it turned into a raging success. It was deemed to be a success partly because of the number of people who came, also because of the number of works that sold, 80 sold, 47 on the first night, but also because the Queen came. In those days, that was the measure of success. And afterwards, the show toured Britain. But I think the most important thing about the whole project was actually what the Brazilian artists themselves said in a newspaper article. It was less about the monetary or material contribution, although it did raise about £800. Mainly a symbolic and moral gesture. In that sense, I'm very proud to have that as part of the Royal Academy's history, even though we were reluctant at first.
Yes, there was a wartime effort, and yes, paintings like this could help support a cause. But there was another cause underlying all of that, which was to show the cultural strength of Brazil.
So the 1944 exhibition in London really brought together some of the key masters of modernism in Brazil at the time. People like Cavalcanti, like Portinari, like Lazare Segal, Roberto Burle Marx, who was both a painter, studied with Portinari, but was also a garden designer.
The Brazilian artists probably had 2 motives. One, which was to show their work to an audience. This was an incredible opportunity to exhibit their work abroad, and I suspect for many, including perhaps Cardoso, that this was one of the first times that their work could be exhibited outside of Brazil. The other cause, the other intention would be about supporting the war effort and putting an end to Nazism and fascism.
I think it's interesting to realize also what the British public was expecting of such an exhibition. I think they wanted something tropical, something easy on the eye, and in fact what they got was something that was quite provocative, that was at the cutting edge of modernism, and not something that they were so used to generally in Britain. And I think that surprised them, and I noticed this really interesting remark in the introduction to the catalogue of the 1944 exhibition. exhibition, where in fact it says as much as if the first returning cargoes of oranges and bananas were in the end but pears and apples. They didn't want pears and apples, they wanted bananas, oranges, pineapples, they wanted Carmen Miranda. They didn't want the socialist realism that came out of someone like Portinari, for example, but that's what they got, and that was excellent art.
Well, I think people were intrigued at seeing paintings from Brazil, which probably they only associated with, as I say, with the tropics and sugar. And so to see that there was a very interesting and varied modern paintings fascinated them.
Cardoso was different from the other artists who were featured in this 1944 exhibition. There is a certain set of traditions that I think help explain why this painting at that time was so successful and so sought after. One has to do with the joyousness of the theme. We have a bunch of nudes amusing themselves on the beach, scantily clad or completely naked in some cases. This element of exoticism is what struck me. It made me feel a little uncomfortable, to be honest. That this was the first work of Brazilian art the museum had acquired, and it's kind of a candy shot view of women on the beach. But there also was an eccentricity and a certain exoticism of the view being presented that I suspect appealed to audiences, especially in the dark and dire times of World War II.
I think this exhibition is a very, very interesting and very early example of the way that exhibitions are deployed in a diplomatic and political context. The British Council was crucial for the organisation of this exhibition. It was also the Foreign Office that was involved, and of course money was being raised for the RAF by the generous gesture of the Brazilian artists. I mean, it is an extraordinarily generous gesture.
The moment in which the exhibition took place was a crucial moment in the history of the 20th century. It was the end of the Second World War. It was the re-establishment of alliances and diplomatic arrangements between countries. And so the significance of the exhibition far exceeds what it claimed to do, i.e. To raise funds for the RAF.
The legacy at the time was that was public interest, and that the exhibition did tour around the UK. I think the more interesting aspect of the legacy is that a number of the works, from the 80 or so sold, made their way into public collections. And indeed, not just in Britain, but also in France, UNESCO, and so on. And I suppose you'd say it was twofold. One is sowing the seeds of a deeper understanding and engagement with interest in Brazilian art, which you could say has started to flourish in more recent decades. But also the idea that artists' involvement with the war effort was a collegial one, and quite an understated one, and one that's worth further exploration.
"26 original paintings from the collection, which is here in the United Kingdom, will be shown in the art exhibition in April 2018. We invite you all to join us in this commemorative art exhibition.